Well, I can see it.
Ready? Let's go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. All members of council are present with Councilor Poling and Councilor Santiago joining us online. Approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve?
Hearing a motion to approve the agenda by Council President Grice. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Councilor Santiago. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comments. Is there anyone that would like to comment on anything not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will close public comments. Move on to the consent agenda, the October 17th, 2022 council work session minutes, October 17th, 2022 city council meeting minutes, the appointments of Paul Fidrich and Sean Finden to the Economic Development Committee. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Hearing a motion by Councilor McHugh. Do I have a second?
I have a comment.
Okay.
The consent agenda is to appoint Paul Fidrich to the Economic Development Committee. He already sits on another one of our advisory committees. That's the Parks and Rec Committee. So I'm just curious if he will remain on the Parks and Rec Committee and be moving over to the Economic Development Committee, or if he,
I believe his intent is to serve on both committees. And our Economic Development Committee is very short of bodies.
thank you.
Do I have a second on the motion? So without a second, the consent agenda motion will die.
So I was gone. Who moved that?
Councilor McHugh.
I'm bringing up the concern that Paul Fidrich already sits on a advisory committee for us, the Parks and Rec Committee. And now he will be also on the Economic Development Committee.
What's the precedence with that?
I do believe we've got people that have served on multiple committees in the past.
There's nothing in the bylaws that prevents that.
What's past practice? Have we had any?
Not to my knowledge.
In terms of folks who could sit on both committees, yes, we have had one. Michael Leipzig was the most recent, actually, he's the only one
He's the only one.
but he resigned from both committees several months ago.
We've had several that were Budget Committee and Parks Committee as well.
So I'll second for the sake of discussion.
Okay, hearing a second. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Does staff have any issues with a member serving on two different committees?
Generally speaking, no.
In light of the times and the numbers that sit on both of these committees, and someone such as Paul being willing to sit on both of them and give his time to that, then I don't know if he's been contacted and been asked if he's staying on both. When you contacted him, Mayor, did he mention?
He gave every indication of staying on both. In fact, the committee members from the Economic Development Committee that encouraged me to go ahead and appoint Paul were saying that he's attending the meetings anyways. Yeah, either online or in person. So it really, he's already attending, so I don't think he's intending to step away from either committee.
Thank you.
Peyton,
I just like to say, I think Paul is very, very competent, and I think his fit with the Economic Committee is very good. He's got a lot of knowledge in that area, and I think he could contribute. So that's why I forwarded the motion.
Mayor,
Counselor,
how many committee members are currently on, Paul's on Parks, and then he would be on Economic Development Committee, correct?
yes.
Okay, how many members do we currently have on each of those?
There's currently 5 members on economic development, 5 or 6, and parks, I think we're at 7 now,
Thank you.
However,
potentially 8.
a couple would be,
But there will be people moving after elections, so those numbers will go down by 1.
Mhm.
We also are missing alternates for both committees.
it's not that I'm not in favor. I just wanted to have an opportunity to have a conversation. And it's been approved.
No, it
Or it's
hasn't.
been moved, not.
And
approved.
seconded. It's on,
Yeah.
it's on the floor for discussion. So is there any further discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Old business. Ordinance number 905, an ordinance amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 2.04 council meetings, modifying section 2.04.080 appointments and sections 2.04.110 committees. This ordinance number 905 is now on second reading. It's been previously moved and seconded during the last council meeting. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing no discussion, I will move it on to a vote. Ordinance number 905, an ordinance amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 2.04, modifying section 2.04.080 appointments and 2.04.110 committees. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, ordinance number 906 is also coming on to second reading. Ordinance number 906. An ordinance regulating fireworks in the city of Scappoose, amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 8, creating chapters 8.26 fireworks and rescinding resolution number 22-11 is on second reading. It was previously moved and seconded at the last city council meeting. On first reading, is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Isaac?
Council asked that we speak with the city prosecutor about their needs relating to enforcement and how the fire district might be involved. So we did reach out, we did receive feedback back. Essentially, what we heard back was that there's an ORS that requires the enforcement officer to have firsthand knowledge of violation. So unless a fire district employee was a enforcement officer, whatever that means, they would not be able to write a violation in his opinion right now. He did ask for some modifications to the language that's included as Appendix B. Basically is saying he wants it very clear what a violation is. It makes it easier to enforce when we get enforcement actions in.
So we've got added language. Do I need an amendment to the motion?
We would want to amend it to add, so that it reflected the, city prosecutors.
Okay,
specifying.
that's what I figured. I just wanted your verification. All right, so what I need is I need an amendment to redo 8.26030 violations as in red on Exhibit B, the alternate language, with 8.26.040 being the penalty. Just amendment to the current motion that's on the floor.
So, Mr. Mayor, I request an amendment to reflect the city prosecutor's additions to the, to 8.26.030 in violation and also 8.26.040 in penalty.
Hearing a motion to amend the motion for ordinance number 906, is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
Council President Grayson seconded it. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
I don't have discussion on the amendment, but I do
Okay.
have discussion on.
Let's do the amendment, then we'll get back to the main motion. All right, all those in favor of the amendment state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment carries. So now the main motion for ordinance number 906 is the Exhibit B alternate language. And that's the main motion. Is there any discussion? I thought you had,
I do, and it doesn't change anything about how we're proceeding or not proceeding here, but I talked to Isaac earlier, just for on the record, about the city prosecutor's position that a police officer needs to witness, and I brought up that a citizen can issue a uniform traffic citation. So I just want some clarification on what the difference would be in between a UTC, which is a violation, and this. It could be that this is a city ordinance versus an ORS. I don't know. And again, it doesn't change anything about the ordinance, but I'm just curious why in that sort of realm, a citizen who observes couldn't be a witness for the purposes of issuing a citation under the city ordinance.
Thank you for asking.
Peter?
I mean, this is probably a question for our prosecutor, because like Tyler, I was surprised that that was the response. I don't know. Honest with you.
Probably has a good reason, but
I'll be very careful about who I ticket in the future as a citizen.
Can we get that answer from? Perfect. All right, is there any other discussion on ordinance number 906? Seeing none, ordinance number 906, an ordinance regulating fireworks in the city of Scappoose, amending Scappoose Municipal Code Title 8, creating chapters 8.26, fireworks, and rescinding resolution number 22-11 as amended. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. New business. Scappoose Parks and Recreation Committee grab horn process recommendation. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For you tonight.
I've had a rough week.
I'm
I was like, that's a loaded question.
For me today. Normally it's good.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am here representing the Parks and Rec Committee. On Thursday, October 20th, the committee voted unanimously to put a hold on the grab horn process in an effort to gain additional information. We expect to gain a significant amount of information with the current master planning underway that will assist us in fine-tuning our decision-making process. In an effort to further aid this process, we would also like to continue deliberations with the school district and other key players to negotiate land use agreements. For example, if through collaboration with the schools, we are able to expand access to sports fields, or learn fields will be added once the middle school is built, that information will redirect the design of grab horn. We feel that this type of coordination will be the best use of our available land in Scappoose, and this will be a goal that the committee will bring to the table at our December 12th meeting for goal setting. That is the biggest update that we have tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kara.
All right, next item. Number 5, waste management CPI rate increase. Welcome. You just state your name and obviously you're with Waste Management.
Good evening, Mayor. My name's Dave Huber, Senior Manager, Public Sector Services for WM, and with me tonight is my colleague.
Nick Reese, Route Manager.
Thank you. So we have a quick PowerPoint we wanted to go through with you, tonight. We just wanted to touch on our Scappoose operations report, the need for rate adjustment. And then we also have the updated rate sheet, as well as a rate comparison and any questions or answers that you may have. So with that, Nick, do you want to go over the services?
Yeah, so this is some quick stats for the city of the Scappoose. We have 2,408 customers residentially, commercial services 162 customers, and 14 customers off boxes. Oh, apologize. Can everyone hear that?
It's just for them and like the recording.
Okay.
Yeah,
Should I go through it again?
I think you'll be okay.
Okay. Then 14 customers for roll-off boxes, and that's something that's constantly changing just with needs of builders and roofers and other customers in the industrial area.
Okay, so some of the rate pressures that we've seen here over the past year, even past 2 years, has been labor. Just ensuring that our employees are properly compensated, along with the labor shortage. We've seen some challenges there the past few years. Increase in disposal costs in relation to the Columbia County Transfer Station, where we dispose of the wet waste that we pick up here in the city of Scappoose. There's been a significant decline in commodity value for the past few years. There's been a 180% increase in processing costs as of October of 2022. So that's been some definite headwinds for us. And then there's been the increase in fuel costs year over year, 48%. Our trucks were still diesel, and so I think we've all seen that impact us here over the past year. So we did make some changes here in the past year and a half. Our operations, we consolidated with one of our operations just on the other side of Cornelius Pass Road in Hillsboro, Aloha specifically. And then the change in processors of recycling material. So with that change, with our trucks going parked over in Aloha, we've been able to use another facility for our recycling materials, which has been a good thing because it hasn't cost as much to recycle that material as it has when we utilized the facility here in St. Helens. So that's been a plus this past year and a half. So here are and I know this is a real busy spreadsheet here, but this is the proposed rates that we're requesting that would go into effect January 1st. So the most common service that we see here in the city of Scappoose is customers that have a 35-gallon garbage cart. And of course, along with that, they get a recycling cart and they can also have a yard debris cart. That's a subscription service, but that's also available. But you can see there with the 35-gallon cart that the CPI adjustment would move that rate from what the current rate is, $22.59 to $24.22. But then you also see the rest of the rates there for commercial service as well as drop box service for our customers. So the next slide. Yeah, this slide, this is a nice comparison. We just thought it would be nice to share the comparison that we have here in the city of Scappoose with some other communities. So for example, again, it's kind of a busy spreadsheet there, but you can see the current rate that we charge for, again, the 35-gallon garbage cart here in the city of Scappoose is at $22.59. Along with that CPI increase, it would take it to $24.22, which is we see it's very competitive when you compare it to the other rates within the area. So there's the county rate outside the city limits of Scappoose, which is about $8 more per month. And then the county area up outside of Vernonia, at 33.30. Then the Washington County area in Aloha, it's not as high. It's 25.98, but still a little bit higher, as well as the city of Portland. So just a good example of how the rates can be, they're still competitive, or we see that they're still competitive here in the city of Scappoose among other areas. Have any questions? Free to.
Pete, would we get those better rates because I'm friends with Mike Jeffries?
So, yeah, good comment. Mike Jeffries is our director of pricing, and he couldn't make it this evening, but that might be you might have.
I figured that was it.
It's Dave, right?
Correct.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Dave, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So on these cost inflations that you went over, are these actual or are these anticipated? So obviously, like the fuel expenses, we all firsthand witnessed and experienced that. But these other things like wage increase and the other things that you mentioned, are those things that you guys are actually already experiencing, or are they just in theory?
Yeah, no, good question, Counselor. Those are pressures that we've already seen and already had, this past year, past 2 years, really. And of course, we're always conscientious about coming in, requesting rate increases. I think it's been over 2 years since we've come in for any rate increase to the city. But yes, to answer your question, these are some of the things that we've really seen impact our business this past year.
And the consolidation that you referenced earlier, has that reduced your costs, or what impact has that had on your costs?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've seen really the advantages are some of the synergies that we found with consolidating the operations here. We had our trucks parked here just outside the city of Scappoose, but being able to centralize them to a larger facility where we have more ability to cover routes when things were a struggle with employees, truck repairs. We have more capacity to take care of that. Those downtimes with trucks, and we've witnessed supplier issues. With getting truck parts and that kind of thing. So all that really helped us with the move is on top of just the big expense of having a facility and a lot of environmental impacts that we were looking at with the facility. So there's been some gains, but the negatives that I mentioned earlier have somewhat outweighed the gains for the past couple of years.
Okay, and then, so you're using the CPI. Are those accurate for what you're experiencing? Are they low, or where are those coming in at as far as the additional expenses that you're seeking to recover here?
The CPI itself is, that's the one that we've used here historically with the franchise. I will say, I know that we've experienced higher CPIs here in the Pacific Northwest this past year and a half.
But do you have a calculation of what what the difference is in between what your cost is now because of the increases? Is the CPI accurate, in other words, or is your expenses higher? Are they lower, or where are they falling at?
With the CPI, it should, or at least the hope is that it will keep us, within that reasonable rate of return, here operating in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Brandon.
So, thank you, Dave and Nick, right? Thank you for joining us tonight. Quick question. Dean was our previous manager for the regional programs. Is he retired now?
Yes, and thank you for reminding me. So Dean did retire just back in June. And so, and I have had that opportunity to take his place, which is, I'm still in transition period. So, currently I've, for the last few years, my title's been senior district manager and I've had oversight of all the collection operations in Washington County, Forest Grove, specifically Aloha, as well as Newburgh. So, and I'm familiar with Scappoose because I used to actually pick the garbage up here about 20 years ago. So back in the day, but worked with Dean for many years. And so he is retired now.
Great. Good luck to Dean in retirement.
Yeah.
So yes, labor shortage is a real issue in your industry among a lot of CDL requirements and jobs. So your drivers are based out of is it Washington County?
It's out of, Washington County. It's in Aloha, just off of Blanton and Cornelius Pass Road.
And were your drivers previously, were they residents out here or were they always commuting out?
That's a good question. And Nick, you can probably speak to that.
Yeah, it's about 50-50. We do have a couple of drivers that still live out here, but most of our drivers live on the other side of the hill.
Great. And then you had indicated that commodities have increased 180% over the last month. You had indicated October 2022.
It should be for the past year.
For the past year, okay. And I am well aware that there are lots of increases being passed along through, through our MRFs or the transfer stations. Is there anything that you would identify as what that increase is specifically to commodities as we're looking at a recycling stream? And then do we know, like, are we a contributor, Scappoose, to the contamination? So are we, if we're doing well and providing a clean feedstock for the recycling stream, that 180% isn't necessarily our doing, but yet we share in that burden. We understand that, but just to get an idea.
Yeah, good question, Counselor. Historically, we've always, the feedback that we get from those markets that we take the material to, and you're right, that's specific to the recycling markets, recycling that we take to the markets. But the feedback that we get historically is that the material that we dispose of or take to the facilities to have recycled is clean, is good clean material overall as a whole. So there's rarely any complaints or any issues with contamination, in a gross nature, I guess, if you will, on our materials coming into those facilities.
Well, it's great to know that we're a part of the solution, not part of the problem out here.
Exactly.
But obviously 180% increase to the industry, somebody's going to have to pay for it. Who is the new MRF? Is it an internal MRF for waste management? I didn't think you had a MRF at your facility in Aloha.
We don't. So the facility that we've been using is Far West Fibers in Hillsborough, and it's actually very, very conveniently located to our site there. It's only about 2 miles, not even that, down the road. So
Very close.
yeah, very close. So it's really made it, in terms of efficiencies, bringing that material back and taking it to that facility, and then just going down the road just to park the truck, which has been nice.
And where were we sending it prior to going to this new facility?
The material, and Nick, you could probably speak to that a little bit more, but I know it was all going to the St. Helens, Columbia County Transfer Station.
Yeah, so and also a good example of that is today's recycle route on this side of the highway. It's usually a 2-load day, and so we're obviously not taking that back to our west in Hillsborough. That the first load will go up to St. Helens just to get the most efficient, cost effective.
Okay. So with your facility consolidation and now being in Aloha, the amount of fuel that you had indicated, you guys are driving more miles now just to get out to our routes, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and so that cost increase is being brought on to us as ratepayers due to the fact that once what was used to be here, which would be a lot less or a lot more cost effective in your fuel consumption, is now something that's taking place, I don't know, 15, 20 miles away.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the negative impacts that happened because of it.
And then, yeah, I think Councilor Miller indicated, so the CPI is reflective on a national level.
Correct.
Yeah, and so you're saying though that regionally here in the Pacific Northwest, the CPI is actually less than what the cost increases have been in that time frame?
Uh, I think I understand what you're saying, but if you can repeat that again.
So the CPI nationally
Mhm.
is less than what our reality is. In the sense of we pay more per dollar for any service in the Pacific Northwest compared to the rest of the nation for one reason or another.
Yeah, that could be true. It depends on the CPI too, because there's so many CPIs out there, but I think, yeah, I think that's probably safe to say.
Okay.
In this case.
And when you brought up the comparisons, are those rates your rates within those communities?
Good question. Let's see. They are the Columbia County, the rural Columbia County routes are our rates, as well as Washington County and the city of Portland.
Great. Thank you for the clarification and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Council President.
I just wanted to confirm you have submitted a letter here from Kelly, saying that the last time there was a rate increase for Scappoose was July of 2020. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is it common practice that this is an every other year kind of thing, or will we be seeing you a year from now?
We try to do that every 2 years. Yeah, it depends. Some cities ask for yearly, yearly CPIs. But we do try to keep it at every 2 years. Just try to keep that impact overall, I guess, down to a minimum. So
I have another question. I don't know whom this question is for, but what does our contract with you look like? How often do we revisit it, and when does it expire? How do we renew it?
great question. And I don't know, I can't
I
remember.
believe it was just approved about a year ago.
Mhm.
And I think it was for, gosh, was it 10 years?
I believe it was 10 years.
10 years.
Which is pretty typical for
Yeah.
a franchise like that.
It's usually 10 or 20.
Yeah.
Those are our two most.
I'm
common
feel
durations.
pretty confident we went for 10.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure the number 10 is sticking out for me.
Yeah.
And that was an extension of our previous agreement with the 10 years without going out for RFP to
Right.
see any competitive bid, right?
Right. So we did renegotiate the existing franchise. And I believe the previous franchise actually was a 20-year agreement. And then you all settled on 10-year.
Mhm. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Keep it local when you can, please.
Yes.
Yard debris still staying around town?
Everybody's still staying here in town.
Got something.
So I
Paper bar, yeah.
think what I need is a motion to approve. I don't think there's a motion in here.
There
so.
isn't.
Mr. Mayor,
Council Hart.
I move that council adopt the waste management CPI rate increase as presented.
Hearing a motion by Counselor Lasowski, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McHugh. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.
I'll say hi to Dean too.
All right, next item. Contract for 2022, 2024 sewer CCTV project.
Right, Mayor.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Mayor, Council, these next two items before you are
Mhm.
contract approval. This is relatively routine work, at least for this project, for the sewer main CCTV inspection that Public Works does annually. We have a portion of the system TV'd by a snake camera, and that helps our crews determine where there might be some issues with our sewer system. Contract here is for $31,850.
All right, any questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Council President.
I move that council authorize City Manager Raines to enter into a contract with Professional Pipe Services Incorporated.
Hearing a motion from Council President Greisen, do I have a second?
Second for purposes of discussion.
Second by Councilor Miller. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilor Miller.
Is this a company that we use annually, or how do we select this specific company?
We have used them in the past. In fact, we went with Professional Pipe Services last fiscal year, but we solicit quotes for these. It just so happens that they were the least expensive out of these three that we had requested quotes from.
You answered my next question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have a question.
Jeanette?
So normally your procurement process, is it because a certain threshold amount that you only get a couple of bids, or you continue to extend the contract? What's your procurement, your procurement policy? Sorry, it's getting late over here.
So yes, Jeanette, we do have a procurement policy. This is considered an intermediate procurement, and so it only requires 3 bids versus going out for an RFP. So that's why this is a little bit less intense of a process.
And you go lowest bidder, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Thank you.
Oh, do you have anything else, Jeanette?
No, I'm sorry, I just said thank you.
Oh, no. Yeah, I know, it's delayed. It's okay. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, number 7, contract 2022 to 2025 Northwest Waterlines Replacement Engineering. Mr. Whitehouse.
Yes, so this is procurement of engineering services for designing some replacement water lines up in the northwestern section of the city. It's about 2,300 lineal feet of water main. Staff solicited actually 5 quotes on this one from different engineering firms. We received 4 back, and Century West Engineers came in with the lowest estimate for scope and fee. And staff recommends contracting with Century West for $35,000, $35,720.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions?
Mayor,
Councilor Miller.
just to be clear, this is just for the engineering. Just want to make sure that's on the record. 35,720 just for engineering. Okay,
That's correct.
Yeah, anything else? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I
Solosowski.
move that council authorize City Manager Raines to enter in a contract with Century West Engineering to design the Northwest Water Lines replacement.
Hearing a motion by Councilor Lasowski, do I have a second?
second.
Seconded by Councilor Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, ordinance number 907, ordinance renaming Commerce Drive to Northeast Commerce Drive and Aviation Court to Northeast Aviation Court. Mr. Johnson.
Mayor, Council, we have another recommendation from the Planning Commission to rename Commerce Drive to Northeast Commerce Drive and Aviation Court to Northeast Aviation Court. These are 2 streets around the Columbia Commerce Center, which is developing near the air park. You can see on the vicinity map that Commerce Drive is continuous with and positioned linearly between Northeast Crown-Zellerbach Road and Moore Road. Aviation Court intersects with Commerce Drive and extends to the west as a cul-de-sac. So for both of these, their current road type is correct, but when they were platted in the first and second phases of the plat, they lacked a directional indicator. The Planning Commission in the Planning Commission staff report reviewed the findings put forth by the planner. Chapter 12.24 of the Scappoose Municipal Code sets forth the procedure for approving a street renamel which starts with a recommendation from the Planning Commission and then comes to council for an ordinance.
All right, thank you. And Jay, this is a public hearing, so I go ahead and open up the public hearing. Does there, anyone would like to comment on the renaming of Commerce Drive to Northeast Commerce Drive and Aviation Court to Northeast Aviation Court?
Speak after.
Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move it on for council to discuss. Mr. Johnson, you had something.
I had one more note to add just to get it on the record. We had spoken with the county about this and just clarified with them that these two street renamings can be put forth in one ordinance.
Any comments by council?
Just to confirm, police or fire department had been informed, provided feedback, supportive of these requests, correct?
This is all a big effort led by the fire chief to clarify for safety purposes, mail delivery, emergency response, waste management, even that, you know, for purposes of navigating somewhere as quickly as possible, that it's a road. If it looks like a road, it be called a road. And if it's northeast, it be called northeast.
Peter?
Just to put it out there, the US Postal Service, when they look at address, would call this a prefix and would call the type of street, like court, the suffix, and so would not consider this part of a street name. But despite pointing that out to the county, they are requiring us to go through this process to add prefixes and suffixes. I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction that has to do that.
All right.
Mayor? I just have a question. So what is, this is for my own education, what is the process once we approve it? Who does it go to and how does it make its way through the different entities that need to know about it? The fire district, the police department, 911, the assessor's office, things like that.
So we have a list of agencies that we send a notice of adoption to. And then we learned very recently actually that we have to take the recorded ordinance, should this pass, to the county, the signed by the mayor and the recorder, to the county, and have a recording fee paid for. And yeah, so that's another step to the process after the ordinance is passed.
Is there any overlap, or any overlap's not the right word, but is there any correlation with like titles or like deeds to property and things like that? Or is that all covered at when it's recorded at the county level with the assessor's office?
I would point to Lori for that question, who's online.
Again, for my own education.
Lori?
Hi, yeah. Just a second.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, Mayor and Council. Yeah, Tyler, good question. Basically, there are no structures addressed currently off of either of these streets, so it's not going to affect anyone currently. But correct, it would have to get recorded at the county, the ordinance, once it's adopted. It goes to the tax assessor as well, and so then they would update the records for situs addresses that are affected.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other comments, questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Council President Greisen.
I move that council adopt ordinance 907 to rename Commerce Drive to Northeast Commerce Drive and Aviation Court to Northeast Aviation Court.
Hearing a motion by Council President Greisen, do I have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Councilor Santiago. So ordinance number 907 will be going on to first reading. Ordinance number 907, ordinance renaming Commerce Drive to Northeast Commerce Drive and Aviation Court to Northeast Aviation Court is on first reading. We'll come back at our next regularly scheduled council meeting for discussion and potential adoption. Next item, ordinance number 908, an ordinance of the city of Scappoose creating Scappoose Municipal Code 5.07, psilocybin severus centers. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We had a discussion about these proposed regulations at the October 17th work session. I wanted to mostly draw your attention today to the results that came out of that work session with the new proposed code. The quick one first, we added language that strengthens and makes it more clear that all operations related to psilocybin services do take place entirely indoors. We used to have more indirect things such as no walk-up windows, but now we have made it clear with those words that it has to take place entirely indoors. This really protects the users, employees, and people passing by the service centers. Next up, we added churches to the areas that create the prohibition zones. As mentioned in the work session, churches are a place where families and youth tend to gather a lot. So we believe it's pretty reasonable to add these into the buffer zones. Our GIS consultant was really good at getting us maps back really quickly so that we could figure out what works best for the city. And then we got a little more specific with lighting standards, referencing the Illuminating Engineering Society, which promotes specificity. It also aligns with our Public Works design standards because these are the standards that references. And then obviously, you know, keeping these areas safe and crime prevention. But the largest theme that came out of the work session seemed to be tightening up the regulations. So a number of things do that. I mentioned earlier the indoor requirement for all related uses, adding specific lighting standards. And then where appropriate, I added manufacturing, storage, distribution, and use throughout the code provisions so that we're getting at all operations in the stage of the production, sale, use, oversight of psilocybin services. I did want to mention, and then we also added that visual screening. So you put a shade on your door, all the windows covered. That has to be in use at all hours of the day. We did look into how large the building could be because that was something that came up at the work session, and we found that the state statutes do not allow us to regulate that. On top of that, we also have zoning codes for each of the expanded commercial and general commercial zones, and adding restrictions on setbacks, building heights, sizes, things like that would conflict with our zoning codes, and we would want to defer to those in the development code rather than have these kind of standards outside the development code. And then in regards to the discussion of how large these buffer zones are going to be, staff is recommending that the buffer zones be 1,000 feet from the different types of facilities that we had mentioned. If you take a look at exhibits B through D, you can see mock maps of the different potential sizes of the exclusion zones from 1,000 feet, 1,250 feet, and 1,500 feet. The reason that staff is recommending the 1,000 feet buffer zone, though, is purely for legal defensibility. We want to recommend regulations to you that are going to be defensible, and we can follow a path of logic and justify the rationale of it. Our major area concern is applying so many restrictions that we completely prohibit someone coming and opening up a service center without referring this to the voters to do such a thing to effectively ban it. So yeah, with that, I think now is a good time to stop for questions and discussion.
So this is, again, is an ordinance, so we're going to have a public hearing. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to ordinance number 908? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up to council for discussion.
Mayor,
Counselor.
Is there any indication if this is going to be so like with marijuana, there was an increased concern and it happens, issue with burglary and robbery. Do we have, I don't know enough about this to really correlate the two, if that makes sense. Does anybody here know and speak to that part?
We are the first state in the nation to be doing this, so we really don't have any data we can point to other places. I think that, you know, if these sites are very secure, then it makes robberies less likely.
And that is where I'm going with this. If we should be prescribing more, or at least have it in our thoughts, you know, like the double entryways where you have to be buzzed in, and what are the impacts of the people that have this treatment? Is there any adverse that where somebody could have a, I don't know what the right term is to use there. I don't want to say a psychotic episode. That's probably not the correct term. But then we're making it so that the doors and windows have to have shades on them too, which creates a public safety issue for responders too, because they can't see inside the building. So I'm just thinking through all these different things. And the biggest issue is we don't really know much about this. Does anybody have any insight on how much, do we know how much this costs? I mean, I think that's probably a good basis to understand the length that people will go through to try to steal it.
There was recently a report on OPB about this, and the person who was opening a facility in that report, which I believe was in Southern Oregon, indicated that it would be thousands of dollars because it was like 8 treatments or 10 treatments over a period of time. So I don't think it's inexpensive. I don't know whether, and again, they were interviewing people from a variety of perspectives, but it kind of, nobody said, no, that's not the case. I mean, I think that what the article indicated was this is kind of long-term treatment.
Are you, sorry, can I?
Go ahead.
Are you hoping that maybe with the assistance of legal counsel and the chief, that we could come up with something that would be helpful for first responders and having more visual, or people needing, like you're saying, the double buzzed in and out? I don't know if that's something we can control, but like if somebody is trying to get out, they cannot get out unless they are let out.
I don't know, because the problem is that we don't know what to expect,
Yeah.
right? So we don't want to be unreasonable and then have all these restrictions that are ridiculous, in lack of a better term. But at the same time too, if we only have one shot to prescribe restrictions on this too, then we do need to be thoughtful about it. You know, if this is a thousands and thousands of dollars treatment too, then that would signal to me that if they're keeping that product inventory on site too, then yes, we probably do have a security issue with burglaries. So, you know, what is the requirement for these facilities with their security? Marijuana, well, depending on the amount, obviously, you know, the cost of marijuana is expensive, but you know, if this is more of a rarity too, then that's going to probably also increase the likelihood that there's break-ins for these things too. Chief, do you have any advice?
No, this is actually very new to me. I would say that we'd seek out other cities that may have ordinances already in place and see what they look like.
So are we following, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay. Are we following the same rules, in lack of a better term, that we have for marijuana dispensaries on this as far as security goes? CCTV, controlled access, verification of identity before they even are allowed in the facility. Are those things that we can even prescribe?
My experience is is that if things are grounded in health and safety, that they're usually pretty defensible. So if something like buzzing people in and out, I mean, that isn't per se regulating, that is regulating the activity to some extent, but really it's, regulating say health and safety issue. Something like requiring a large safe so that this would be stored in the safe or the money would be stored in the safe, a time lock safe. That's something we've seen with the marijuana industry that was pretty widely accepted by everyone, I think, because it's a cash business.
So there's going to be two driving factors that determine if this is going to be a burglary and robbery issue, right? That's going to be the value and how much is stored in the facility. So do we have any restrictions on how much can be stored? Like I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here. I apologize. Brainstorming rather.
Mayor.
Nick.
I just want to point out that under the statute, regulating the public's access to psilocybin service centers is one of the provisions that local governments are allowed to regulate.
Done. I would like to open up that discussion then.
If it's still the case that that it's safer for us from a legal and liability perspective to prescribe these things now, in other words, it ties our hands to be able to do it later, then I think that we do need to step back and take a more thorough look at this as far as the security aspect goes.
So just to point out that this has to pass by the end of November, or
Okay.
else it will go into effect without any restrictions. Because as of January 1st, we kind of locked ourselves into a timeline. So just to make you aware, we have to make changes tonight if they're going to be made.
Well, so we're not paving new ground here. I mean, we can do it by this month. So as far as a facility being secure and having things inside of it that you don't want people to get, we're not paving new ground. We know how to secure facilities. It's a matter of making it be part of this, I think. So I don't think this is a big lift. I just think that it's a matter of making sure that these facilities are secure. When I'm assuming we can roll some things back after we have a better grasp of what these things actually look like. But common sense just tells me if we have something that's really expensive inside of a building, people are probably going to want that and they're going to go through extremes to be able to get that. So if we can, keep that in mind in our design or whatever, or what we're prescribing, I think that would be wise to do.
Oh, sorry.
So
Sorry.
I would like to include some sort of a way for people to be let out of the facility, like a two-way in and out. I don't
get into fire code issues.
I don't know, something that, because we don't know how people will react. So if they're just gonna like run out off onto the street, like, then we deal with it, I guess, but I don't know. So I'd like to look into that. I'd like to look into, can we do anything about like security camera around the exterior,
Good idea.
on all sides of the building, or just by, like exterior doors or something like that. Those are the kind of things that are triggering my thoughts when I'm listening to Counselor Miller.
Again, we don't want to be unreasonable, but, just on the basis that this seems like a high dollar value and it seems like a rare item too. Those two things combined make me think that we need to really think this through.
Well, first of all, NJ, thanks. It's a good report. Appreciate it. Well done. What's the county's position on this? Because chances are these are not going to be, we don't have a lot of places for them to do much here. Does anybody know what the county's position is on fibrocillin?
It looks like they put an opt-out ordinance.
Do what?
They
Just
put
like
an
us?
opt-out ordinance in. A lot of counties are putting in, as counties are asking to be opted out.
Okay.
So they have to renew that every 2 years.
And I really like the idea of security cameras. Is that something we could require?
Yeah, that's a requirement for the cannabis industry. So like having a safe and requiring them to store it in a safe, that's something that's pretty, I think that there's safe rooms and with the cannabis industry that are required. there's CCTV that's required. So I don't think that will be an undue burden on the people. I hadn't thought about the issue from a fire perspective of doing like double lock doors or things of that nature that could pose an issue, but I think and I just don't know how much product they would need to have on hand. I mean, what the OPB article at least said was this is microdosing, and I don't know what constitutes a microdose, but requiring it to be in a safe that's connected to the ground doesn't seem unduly burdensome.
Wasn't one of the concerns we had, Peter, though, that they could be growing and cultivating these on site?
There's a position, excuse me, I think there's a provision in there somewhere they can't do that. As I
Okay.
recall reading that last time.
We have that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That obviously helps reduce, the dollar value of product inside. That's going to be a deterrent right there.
Can I move on to like the,
Wait, Jeanette?
oh,
Oh, thank you. Well,
no,
the, Peter just already answered some of my, just said some of my comments, but I think as a business owner, I'm trying to also think of the business coming in, they would automatically take precautions in security, right? Because it's their business. They're probably already going to require some type of security, some type of safe. So if we implement, and I wasn't sure until Peter said if we can, just like the cannabis industry, that we can say, well, they have to have a safe or they have to have cameras. So I wasn't sure if we could implement those types of rules in a business, in a private business, say, hey, you need to have cameras because you're implementing a cost that's going to come from them. It's not like the city's going to provide the cameras. So I think I get it. We're trying to be cautious, but automatically, I think as a business, they're going to take precaution on their own anyway for their safety and for their customer safety. That's just my 2 cents and my thoughts.
Thank you, Jeanette.
was it about the other thing?
I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify about the
please.
county.
Yeah.
So earlier this year, the Columbia County Commissioners opted not to send this back to the voters. So I wanted to clarify if it was opt out in the sense of not
Yeah,
participating and bringing it back to the voters for additional input.
St. Helens is.
Yes.
Correct. St. Helens is, Rainier isn't, Clatskanie is, so I mean, it's kind of hit and miss in Columbia County here, I guess.
I was just hoping we could talk about the exclusion zones.
Go ahead.
I understand being able to defend, from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet, it really does narrow down the options for someone to have a business. However, I think from my perspective, our defense is that unlike a liquor store or a marijuana store, you're not purchasing it and leaving, you're actually consuming it in that space. So in my opinion, I would like to move beyond the 1,000 feet. However, I'm open to that conversation.
As a note to your conversation, I did count the properties. So currently at
Yes.
1,000 feet, there's 16 properties, one of which is a trail space and most of the rest are already occupied.
Mm-hmm.
You go down to 1,250, there's 6 open properties, one of which is a trail space. You go to 1,500 feet, there is a trail space. Does significantly restrict.
Can you go back to that? At the 1,000 feet,
There are 16 available properties technically that would be allowed to have this facility, but
Okay.
most of those are already places that have businesses. So I think we talked about Imart was one of the properties. Goodwill, Les Schwab, the movie theater technically is a bunch of little properties in that
Mhm.
building. That's all included, and then many of the properties in that little commerce center there. So we didn't actually look at what's available for rent.
Yeah, so there is space to rent over there.
There's, well, I don't know if there is, but those are currently occupied.
Okay,
So it looks like when I'm looking at the 1,000 map, the property that was formerly owned by the city that Wana Credit Union owns
yeah.
is available. Little sliver of property behind Patano's is available, and in front of Fleshwab, these are all blank properties. Where there's a bakery and a hairdresser on the backside of where the theater is, that looks like would be a property that's available. The bread place and the senior center store, and then the empty site next to OHSU, that's that corner property that was used for parking during COVID, is available. And then in the north, it looks like that property that they're showing it is available is that property that's sort of available, but it has so many things on it that it's almost impossible to develop. So when you go out of that, it looks like you're at 1,250 feet. You don't really change that much, except that you eliminate the hairdresser and bakery property and some of the theater property, but not the commerce center there, and then you don't eliminate the Wana property or that really difficult to develop property on the north at 1,250. But at 1,500 feet, you are clearly just banning it.
Yeah.
Because you're leaving no property available for development, which would
Unreasonable.
be considered, yeah.
So and the further we go out too, the more this pushes it into residential areas too. So I don't know, in neighborhoods, and I don't know that that is what we really want to do here. 1,000 feet is what turns a misdemeanor into a felony from a school for possession. So I think that, but I think that 1,000 feet is reasonable. And then we have on the record now that 1,500 feet doesn't allow it in the city. So I don't think that those are options.
And it's not, you can't do it in residential. It just have to be in
Yeah,
commercial
when I
zones.
was saying that, it occurred to me.
I
what was
thought
saying.
maybe that'd click for a second. Not gonna be any there.
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor.
NJ, over at where the DEQ currently is, I used to call it Kim's Video. We used to get VHS rentals there on a good Saturday night. No longer the case, but the facility is, I believe, is also a church, and I didn't see that it didn't highlight on the new map. I just didn't know if that would make it wouldn't change, I don't think, the availability of space.
Right.
But just to note that that wasn't captured on here. So just as whatever we do decide in the future, that is captured on either 1,000, 1,250, 1,500.
Yes, thank you. And two notes on that. Number one, we are not, whatever exclusionary buffer zone we decide on, these maps just can't be binding. We have to just look at the code and then apply it. And secondly, we did look at that and we couldn't find evidence that it's an active church.
Stand that.
And so, yeah, that's what went into that.
So, and just when you're looking on the exclusion zones on this mapping, Kim's Video on the 1,000 feet is outside the exclusion zone, but at 1,250 and 1,500 is inside the exclusion zone. I'm just looking at the roads, I mean, I'm trying to imagine the items versus the names of the roads. Oh, which house is on that corner? Oh, that's where Northwest Natural Gas is. Okay. Or not Northwest, Northwest Heating and Cooling. So all those industrial, light industrial, commercial spots that are north of Williams, I believe, because I think that's the name of it, because we blocked that off 20 years ago. On this side of, I think it's Second Street and north are a lot of, that is still commercial area. Riding all the way up to the Crown Zellerback Road, because the storage facility is commercially zoned as well.
There's a comment from Lori. You might be able to add to this.
Lori?
Hi, Mayor and Council. Actually, the DEQ building as well as the mini storage, that's all zoned light industrial. And we weren't looking at those properties, just commercial and expanded commercial.
So Kim's video is light industrial?
Yes.
Oh,
I don't think it matters for this discussion, but there is a Montessori school on Santosh. If that's noted.
As a note, I was looking through the ROS. There was a question about quantities earlier. The Oregon Health Authority is going to be regulating that. So for our earlier discussions, we can't get to that area.
That's another thing to note for the more general thing is that OHA and their licensing body are going to cover 99% of the regulations for all of the operations we're talking about.
really, we're allowed to regulate time, place, and manner.
And the first page of the staff report spells out the areas, the 5 areas where we can regulate.
And just to clarify with that can all change too, right? Or, I mean, as this is a new launch, a new venture for the state of Oregon, a lot of these things, as they haven't been defined, and we're trying to define them futuristically before the program is launched, the OHA will always have authority to make changes that we would have to implement regardless of what our ordinance is. Is that correct?
Well,
So
we
if they
would,
made an exclusionary zone of 500 feet and we put it at 1,000, we would have to default to the 500.
so
Went the wrong way.
there's some,
Should have meant 1,500.
Mm-hmm.
there's some real questions about to what extent they can do preemption and to what extent we can use our home rule authorities. But, you know, we would need to see what legislation they proposed and, we would change our code if appropriate.
Seems like also based on my experience, typically, and again, we don't know exactly what the psilocybin rules because they're brand new, but it seems like typically with the state, what they're putting out is usually the minimum. You can't do less than them. You can do more. It's usually how that works most of the time. Not that that will be the case with this, who knows, but usually that's how that works.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Because I'm not educated in this area, but Counselor Miller's talking about felony charges and all the, so obviously legal counsel and staff is recommending that we stay at the 1,000 feet. I personally don't think that 1,250 is unreasonable, but that's my personal opinion. So can someone please explain to me why 1,250 is unreasonable, whether that's for whatever he's talking about? Yeah. Thank you.
I think I would just say that 1,000 feet is the most defensible. And that's just because of what we see around the state for cities that are trying to put in ordinances for this. 1,000 feet is what we're most consistently seeing. And then in addition to that, 1,000 feet is what is in our marijuana code. And the marijuana code, I believe, only references 1,000 feet from school, parks, and other marijuana facilities, whereas we have in this about 6 or 7 prohibited sites.
Additionally, our concern is that by taking that number of potential available properties from 16 to 6, that could be seen as unduly restricting access and kind of getting to that. I'm not sure if it's probably not a black, big gray line about restricting something so far as to make it unreasonably restricted, essentially to ban it outright. So our concern is, again, we don't know, you know, where anything is at this point. Right? We're kind of in this muddy waters. And so we're just kind of being conservative.
Follow-up question? So, oh, hold on. You just made a good point, though. If we make it unfeasible for any potential business to open this up, then what is the process for them to make that declaration, I guess, valid?
I mean, I guess they'd essentially sue us.
I mean,
Or is it an internal process through the OHA that they put in a?
so as I read the statutes, we send our stuff to the OHA, and then they do, when people apply for a license at an address, they do a site suitability. So they see whether it fits within the confines of our code. So, I mean, as someone who restricted something down to one site in a city, and that was like 8 years ago. I guess I'm less concerned. I would be concerned if there were 0, because the intent of this is, if you want a strict moratorium, it's this 2-year, every 2-year thing. So I think if we got down to 0, or if we got, I don't know exactly what a trail site is, but I assume that's the Crown Z.
Correct.
Then that becomes, I think, pretty problematic. I think that the difference between, 16 and 6, particularly since under the 1,000 or the 1250, there is a empty site there. I mean, there is property that is unimproved. That has far less legal risk than if we had, if we took it to 0. I think if we take it to 0, we really would have trouble justifying that record unless we had very clear health and safety concerns. And part of the issue with this is we just don't know we don't have answers for you. I mean, one of my frustrations that I've articulated to Alex is that I feel like I can't inform you on legal risk, both because of my ignorance of the subject and also because the statutory scheme is so confusing. I agree with staff, however, that if we're looking at legal risk, 1,000 feet has less risk than 1,250. 1,250 has far less risk than 15 based on our map.
Given the time constraints that we have here, I think we probably need to figure out what our direction is going to be.
How's everyone feeling on this? Let's just do exclusion zone. 1,000, 1,250, 15 feet.
I'm okay with 1,250.
Brendan?
It's not,
Yeah.
that's not gonna get us in trouble. I think we're fine.
I can support 1,250 if that's where council wants to land.
1250.
I'm good with 1,000 or 1,250.
Jeanette?
I'm good with the 1,000, but if everybody chooses 1,250, that's fine.
Josh?
And I would be in favor of the 1,250. I think that having, more restriction at this point until we know more is good.
All right, so it sounds like the council's interested in doing the 1,250 within the ordinance. Anything else from council?
Well, what did that number come up again? Did I miss it? Was it suggested by staff? I mean, what's 1,000 or 1,100 or compared to 1,200? So
I think it was just,
a number?
yeah, numbers up 250 more than 1,000 is an easy circle to make. 1,500 kind of shows you the differences.
Okay.
I think more telling is the data that Isaac gave with the number of available sites.
So yeah, 1,250 does leave available sites without default banning it by not allowing it anywhere. All right, is there any other things inside the ordinance that people want to discuss, or is somebody ready to make a motion? And the motion would have to be with the amendment to make it 1,250 feet.
Were we coming back later with security things, or is that just?
May I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
That we direct staff to take another pass at it related to security and the things that they heard tonight to see if anything can be tightened up and bring it back at the next council meeting.
we could make the timeline for January 1st.
So you would have to be unanimous as a council so that we would declare an emergency so that we could do it in 2 readings in 1 evening and then have it go into effect 30 days later. So if I guess we could do a special, the alternative, if it's not unanimous, is we could have a special meeting and try and pass it so that there could be a second reading there. I just want to make you guys aware of the timelines.
It seems like we're all fairly on the same page, so that if we had something a little more final the next time, we would all feel more comfortable saying yes to that.
I think what Peter's getting at though is that if you essentially, if it's back on first, back on first reading at the next meeting, that you don't have the 30-day period you need to get it passed. So then you're talking about having to rush it through as an emergency because you're out of time.
Is it January 1?
So there's a first and second reading. Yes, January 1. There's a first and second reading, then it takes 30 days to go into effect normally. So right now, as of like tonight, we would need you to essentially be passing a first reading to make that timeline as it is.
What's the time
Fair.
between the first reading and the second reading?
Who said mayor?
Me.
Jeanette, was that you? Jeanette?
Yes. Well, Peter, can't we put the same regulations as cannabis? Because you did say that there was already something implemented in the cannabis business as far as security. Is that
So
correct?
Those are all prescribed by the OLCC, and one of the challenges with this is that this is regulated by the Oregon Health Authority. So we normally have 2 weeks between first and second reading, and then it goes into effect 30 days
Later.
after second reading. So if the alternative is that if we put an emergency clause on it, and it can go into effect immediately versus waiting the 30 days, the problem with that is that it takes unanimous action in order to, read it twice by title only with an emergency clause.
So just to clarify, so we can't say, okay, we're gonna implement 1,250 feet plus we're gonna implement what LOC has on the regulations that they have on the cannabis industry in this case as well?
So it's the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, and
Right.
they actually just changed their name to Oregon Liquor Cannabis Commission. So my bad. But it's their regs that require all the security measures. So we could pull those. It's just, again, we have a timing. And the other thing I'll flag is that there's the one statute that says it has to be in effect before January 1 so the state can process. And then the next one says anything that's in place before January 1 goes away. So I think that there's some legal ambiguity as far as whether we could come back after January 1 and pass stuff again. We would want to highlight that for the Oregon Health Authority, though, because they're trying to kind of play matchmaker here between folks that are interested.
But I think for tonight's purposes, Peter, I think council needs to understand what they need to, what kind of emotion are we talking about that would get us to second reading? Like, if they say they want the 1,250 feet and they want some increased security, granted, they don't know exactly what that means at this point. So are we already in a position where we need an emergency?
Well, we could pass it. I mean, if we're looking at this practically, like, they're going to have to find a site. They're going to have to, do their due diligence with OHA, who I'm sure is going to receive a lot of applications to process. Then they're going to have to lock it up, and they're going to have to do all those things. So what we could do, maybe the safest thing to do, is to lock in the feet in the framework and then pass that through too. And then we can add in some of these additional, like, inside the venue, you need these at a later date, and let OHA, as well as any users or any businesses, know that these requirements are pending, and it's for their own health and safety and the health and safety of their patients that we're trying to do this. And probably as part of that process, we would want to ask them, are there additional things we should be looking at in order to keep you safe and keep your patients safe? Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to police this. We're trying to make sure that it happens in appropriate location. And we're trying to make sure that the business owner, their employees, and the patients that they're helping with this therapy are protected. And so I just want to be very clear that that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to come up with reasonable health and safety restrictions to keep the city safe, the business owners safe, the employees safe, and the patients safe.
So are there any OHA regulations about security within facilities?
I was panning through and searching. I could not find anything in the RS.
Or what about the,
OARs, those are yet to come out.
Those have not come out yet.
They have not yet released the administrative rules.
So that's part of.
we don't know even if there might have something already built in on that site or that.
So to adopt Oregon administrative rules, you have to go through an entire rulemaking process. And there's plenty of opportunity for public comment and all that. And then they write the OAR. So we don't have any of that framework yet. What we do have is a statutory scheme.
Mayor?
Yes.
So just to clarify, Peter, so you're saying we can come back to this security issue later after the fact? Is that what you're saying? Just to clarify.
Yeah, because the initial review that the OHA is doing is just, I'll call it site appropriateness. So they take our regulations and the map, and then they look at the site that's proposed. And if the site that's proposed is next to a school and ours says 1,250 feet from a school, they'd say, you can't have it at that location. So that's, at least initially, as I understand it, what they're doing. And some of these in facility, because it's not a store, it's a facility, in facility health and safety things, I don't think that would not be part of the OHA site review, because that would occur at a later date.
So I guess, in my opinion, for sake of time, I think that we can revisit the security issue when that comes forth later on, and then just put the amendment to 1,250 feet.
I don't have an issue with that so long as we're, yeah, we don't corner ourselves and do something that's later going to be overturned.
I think if you do it, if you do the first one, you got your first step, and if you're allowed, it sounds like we might be allowed to come back and change things, right?
I think there's certainly a legal argument that we can do that.
Yeah. So I think the important thing is to get the time, place, manner down. Then we can work with the state.
And hopefully there's more information that comes out too, so that, I mean, we could be blowing this way out of proportion. We just don't know right now.
Yeah.
You are not the only ones that are concerned. There's a lot of concerned people out there, so.
Right. What do you need from us?
So what I think I need is a motion to adopt ordinance number, where's our ordinance number here?
908.
908 with a 1,250 foot exclusion zone from, yeah. So that's what I need, a motion to adopt ordinance number 908 with the 1,250 foot exclusion zone.
I move we adopt ordinance 908 with the 1,250 foot exclusion zone.
Hearing a motion by Councilor McHugh, do I have a second?
I second.
A second by Counselor Santiago. Ordinance number 908 is now on first reading. Ordinance number 908, an ordinance of the city of Scappoose creating Scappoose Municipal Code 5.07 psilocybin service centers with a 1,250 feet exclusion zone is on first reading. It'll come back at our next regularly scheduled council meeting for discussion and potential approval. Next item, calendar. Our next city council meeting is on Monday, November 21st, with a work session at 6 PM, city council meeting at 7. This Thursday, we have a planning commission meeting at 7 PM. City offices will be closed Friday for Veterans Day. Thursday, November 17th, Economic Development Committee meets at noon. Parks and Rec Committee meets at 6 PM. And council or city offices are closed for Thanksgiving on Thursday, November 24th and 25th. Alex, do you have anything?
Yes, Mayor and Council. We had a successful Halloween event with the police department where we handed out lots of goodie bags. And so I just want to thank the police department, specifically Timmy Sue, the chief, Steve Barnes, Sean Barrett, and Eric Zwall. They were all there handing out bags. So just want to say I appreciate that. And then just in general, I noticed that it seems like our police department has been a topic of discussion as of late. I did just want to say that, we try to certainly be as transparent as possible about what's happening at the police department, but that it's a pretty difficult line to walk. We have safety concerns to be considerate of. And also sometimes the things that are happening are personnel matters and they're simply confidential. So there's just a lot of things we can't, put out publicly, but we're certainly trying to be transparent as we can. And also just in general, I think we're working really hard to make the department as successful as possible. It's a really challenging time to be running a police department. It's difficult to hire people. We have limited resources. So, I think that our officers are really dedicated. They're working really hard and, they're stretched thin. And so I just wanted to say that, we're working the best we can. And I know it's challenging, but that I also see that there's positive things happening too, and we're working through it. So.
Thank you. Chief, you have anything?
Yes, I'd like to thank the council for looking at the first two issues in the previous meeting. Thank you very much. We did hire the evidence tech right now. We're able to find some funds to get her going this next couple of weeks. But that's going to make a big difference in how we work moving forward. It's a lot of good things were said about her. She knows her job. She just hit the ground running. There's months, if not a year's worth of backlog that needs to be addressed. So thank you there. We have our officers, as you're aware, in Forest Grove. They're taking kind of a pre-academy, so various classes. It was probably the best move we could have had because just having them sit here day in and day out waiting for the academies to come were kind of draining on them. And it was really difficult to try to find something that was going to work. Forest Grove stepped up and is going to help us, as you heard. I've spoken to the officers pretty much every day, and they're like really, really happy with the way things are moving forward in the classes. It's going to make them very successful moving down the road. Our lieutenant finally got his med and psych scheduled, so that'll be Monday. So hopefully we get a quick turnaround response. I know he already has a rent in place, so he's looking to get out here quickly. So hopefully either the next council meeting or one in December, I'll be able to make an introduction so you guys will be able to meet him. As Alex said, the Halloween giveaway went really, really well. Timmy Sue, who's the heart and soul of the department, already has donut day scheduled for December 10th. She keeps us on our toes. So that'll be a fundraiser for the food bank. And I have some other things that I'll probably be bringing up probably later in December concerning an ordinance that I'd like to bring forward. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Councilor Polling.
I just wanted to say thank you to staff out there and also the police department and all your guys' hard work. The other thing, remember to vote for tomorrow if you haven't already voted. That's coming up really quick, and good luck to those that are on the ballot measure or on the ballot. And then also weather is turning to be really cold, so those of you make sure you cover your water lines and anything else you need to do. That's all I have.
Thank you, Josh. Counselor Santiago.
I don't have much, just thank you, everyone, and I'll see you in next meeting.
Thank you. Counselor Miller.
I just have one thing I want to clarify, just so there's no misunderstanding. As far as the evidence goes with the police department, we haven't lost any cases or had any issues, any administrative issues or anything like that, right? It's just a matter of getting that evidence to the crime lab and disposal.
Not that I am aware of, but those are things I'm trying to avoid down the road.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I just want to make sure that we are
That I'm
aware of, there has not been any cases dismissed or anything like that related to evidence.
Not that I am aware of.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I would have been made aware.
Yeah, I think so too. But I just want to clarify on the record that when we're talking about evidence, because it's such a, big deal, that we're clear that to our knowledge, there has not been any cases that have been jeopardized because of evidence mishandling or a chain of custody issues or anything like
I
that.
think that having her is going to be one of the best things that could have happened to the department.
I'm assuming you're talking about Terry, and I can vouch
Yeah.
for that. She's great. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Council President.
I just wanted to thank the police department for an amazing Halloween drive-through. My kids always look forward to Timmy Sue's bags. She goes above and beyond. They always love seeing which water bottle sticker they get for the year. I do want to thank the chief and Alex for being creative with the ARPA funding to support our police department. I know that you're going above and beyond, doing your best to try and be creative. And I think that doing some field training in Forest Grove is an excellent opportunity. Pete and I sit on the traffic safety committee. And for a while, we've brought up concerns about people traveling into Scappoose on the north side from St. Helens, that, if it weren't for that light right there at Crown Z and Beaver Bark there, or Scappoose Sand and Gravel, that a lot of people just wouldn't slow down into town. And even with that light, they still don't. So we had tried without success through like our public works department, et cetera, to get some sort of a warning sign saying that it's going to be 35 miles, not it is 35 miles, but up ahead it's coming. And ODOT, we just weren't successful with them. But Chief Lugal, I don't know if he sits on another committee, or I think that's what it was. Something came about and we now have a warning sign. Unfortunately, it's underwhelming, but thank you, ODOT, for putting it out there. Unfortunately, it's just a yellow kind of square turned on its corners, and it just says 35 with an arrow up ahead. I would really love for a flashing sign, and unfortunately, we're getting messages from ODOT that they don't like flashing signs on highways. But that's not something I'm really buying, because you can go down the highway to Linton and there will be a flashing sign telling you how fast you're going. So this is
Some time.
Yes, this is a goal of our committee to continue to try and have a little more of a warning to help the speed slow down as you come into town from that side. As I mentioned, and even one of the teachers asked me, what's your favorite job about being a city councilor? And it is always those school visits or school presentation. So, Mr. Mayor, we had some third grade classes come to us, and there's a new curriculum in Scappoose, a new literacy curriculum. And the end of unit project was designing a park and giving input on it. So what they actually did one week was they went on a walking field trip to our local parks, and then they came to City Hall, but they assessed our parks, and then they wrote down some recommendations. These are letters directly to the mayor, because that is what the assignment in the curriculum was. But I did ask for their permission, each class that came. I did ask that all of council could see these. They were very excited that lots of eyes were going to be on them. And then I said, the one committee that would probably need to see them the most was the Parks and Rec Committee. And they were very thrilled about that, considering the
Can
Parks
we,
master plan they are
can I
going
give
through.
these to Susan
You can do.
to make copies for everyone?
Yeah.
Including the Parks and Rec Committee, and then give them back to me so I can try to respond to them. I have a little extra time this week because I can't work.
Yeah, I mean, you could just do back to back, or I don't think there's any I don't think you need to respond to each of those.
Maybe just to the class.
I can give you the emails of the teachers, yes.
Okay.
I I have a parent of mine, my dad, that is a retired teacher in the community, who just has the desire to help seniors in his neighborhood, and I hooked him into becoming a senior center volunteer. So we met with Kay several weeks ago and her husband and outlined all of the tasks and duties that my dad would be capable of doing. They are right now trying to figure out how to get their HVAC units onto the roof. They, that wasn't really part of the whole plan of installing. So they're working on that. They're working on finding people to help with the flooring. And I think that having someone advocate for them and help guide them through meetings, hopefully will help them continue to meet the goals that they have and the things they need to do. So I'm in contact constantly with them, and my dad's there weekly. He just shows up. So yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Council Osowski.
Election season is coming to an end. I would follow up with Councilor Polling and urging everyone to get out and get their ballots into one of the ballot drop boxes before 8 p.m. tomorrow. Regardless of who wins or loses come tomorrow evening, one thing across not only our city, our county, our state, and our nation is that we will need each and every one of our leaders to come together to work collectively and collaboratively to meet the needs of the citizens that we represent. Over this last few months, I've experienced, some really eye-opening actions as being somebody who is on the ballot. And I would hope for the leaders that are elected and that they can come together and work together. I know that this council has done a fantastic job in overcoming our differences and working towards a solution together collectively. So I wish the best to all those that are running for office. I know that Oregon, and if not the nation, will see some major changes, and probably also here in Scappoose as well. And so thank you for getting out the vote and putting our democracy in action.
Councilor McHugh.
Yeah, well, first of all, I get a real feeling in talking to people in the community that there's a sense that the police department is really on the move in a positive way. So that's somehow getting out there, and I think that's certainly kudos to both you and Alex and what's happening there. So definitely there's a sense of that. I think the senior center, the community senior center has lots of needs there. The city has really stepped up and supported them. Glad to see Dad's involved. Hopefully get to run into him one of these days.
You'll be painting the inside soon or something.
That's great, yeah. So anyway, good feelings about what's happening in the city.
Thank you, Pete.
Mayor,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Jeanette?
Yeah, my apologies. It's been a really long day, but so thank you to Councilwoman Greisen that reminded me of something that I should say and mention. We talked about, Carol came in and talked about that the Parks and Recs Committee has asked to put a hold for a survey. So I'm asking everyone to please go on to the survey, and I believe it's on the city website. If you guys can correct me, is it Isaac? And please complete the survey for the Grabhorn project. Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Thank you. Next time I'll gather you down. No, I won't. So, yeah, everyone, if you haven't dropped your ballot off, drop your ballot off. Police department ebbs and flows. I've been here for 24 years. I remember the days when police department staff, officers would come to me and tell me that they would tell their wives that if something happens to me while I'm on duty, call the lawyer because it's probably equipment failure. We don't really have, and trust me, no matter how bad some of our older cars are, we don't have the problem we had with the cars we used to have. We've had budgeted for 24-hour coverage for at least probably 15 to 20 years. In fact, in the 2009 budget, the city manager at the time proposed cutting 2 police officers. And I personally went through the budget line by line with the thought, we're in the recession, the Great Recession, which is different than this one because that one didn't have inflation and projects were coming in at half the price, not double the price. Went through that budget, deferred upgrades, deferred purchases to save keeping our police department fully staffed. That was a priority that we wanted to do. And our biggest problem is the problem we've always had from even 24 years ago. We may be our pay may be right for the size of the city we are, but we're not competing with cities our size for talent. And that's a difficult thing to do. We're competing with St. Helens, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Washington County, Multnomah County, Portland, and they pay a lot more than our officers. And that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to struggle. We have benefits, but we also have limitations for officers that want to advance in the career as well. So they do one heck of a job for us. I've always been proud of the department, and it's been good, and I see it going forward. There's that part of me that loves seeing this whole conversation about the police department because it means people care. When you get letters from community members that are concerned about staffing levels or whatnot, it means that they care about having a good, well-run police department that is well-trained and supports the community and its needs for protection. And that's always been, should always be this council's priority when it comes to policing. So thank you, Chief, for all the work you're doing. I did have one other thing. I was just looking it up. In the application process, I'm going to just comment on the I'll just call it mushrooms for lack of having to pronounce the guy who gave it it's all these drug manufacturers have to give these drugs weird names. I do it all the time with Medicare. Well, what's your drug thing? How do you say that? Anyways, it does say for licensing that the applicant must provide identifying any residence, but it's also a scaled floor plan identifying all points of ingress and egress, camera locations, limited access areas, client administration areas, and areas where the mushrooms products will be stored within a licensed premises. So if that's in the application area, they're thinking about how it's being stored and the security measures and the cameras and everything that's going to be required. I was looking through it. It's a long thing, like you said, and I just kind of glanced on that. So I just want to let you know that there is something in there. I think we need to follow up, find out how robust those regulations are. Anyways, see you in 2 weeks or before then. I will be hanging around town because my doctor has forbidden me from driving. So
You need a ride?
no, I can drive personally. I can't drive for work. Anyways, meeting adjourned.